Hi and welcome. I want to apologize for my voice this morning. I'm a little stuffy, so just give me a little grace in that. I'm starting with a piece of Bristol Smooth, and I've cut it out on my Cricut to this little square size with a tab on it. And this is my mini art ring journal, and so I'm adding some distress ink. The first color is some salvaged patina, and I'm trying to add it fairly heavy, so keep going back over it, adding more. And then the next color is going to be, I think it's antique linen, or no, old paper. And I'm just adding that in the opposite corners. And you'll see when I move my fingers here that I've left a couple little fingerprints, and so I kind of have to go over those again, and that's why I often use a little piece of paper to cover where my fingers lay, just to avoid this, but I hadn't done that this time, so I have to kind of go over it again just in those spots. There. My next step, I'm going to add some with a stencil, and the stencil I cut out of my Cricut. It wasn't my design, but it's from Etsy. And so I cut it out of my Cricut, and it's one of my favorite ones, actually. So I'm going to add some translucent texture paste. And the reason I'm using the translucent is because I want, no matter what I do later, to see the colors that I have put on right now come through in that design. So like in the finished product, you're only going to see the salvage patina when it's through this texture paste. And I don't cover the whole thing. Just in areas that I want it to come through. And I just smooth it down so that it's not anywhere above the stencil. And lift that up carefully. And I have a tub of water. There, you can see it better. I have a tub of water sitting aside that I just dump that in. So now my texture paste is dry. You have to just set it aside. I don't use any kind of heat tool or drying tool because I don't think that works very well. But so I set it aside to dry, and I'm in a pretty humid area, so it takes me a couple hours. I'm not sure how long it would take you in your area, but and so I'm gonna be adding some kind of grunge to this piece, and I've got some vintage photo and some scorched timber, and then a mixture of both, because I think together they make kind of a pretty color. And then I'm using some antique linen spray. I'm going to dry the spray before I start dipping in my colors. And I'm adding some water to the inks on my mat. Invariably, the back of my piece will get kind of grunged up as well. And as you can see, I needed a little more vintage photo because I want to make sure I am covering enough so that when I wipe off the excess that's on top of the texture paste, the design of the stencil is going to come through and not be lost if I don't have the rest of the background covered. I hope that makes sense. I'm drying and dipping and drying. Gives a little more layers. And then I'm just using my brush to kind of bring in some to the areas that weren't getting any because of where I was dipping it. It's kind of hard to do the smooshing technique when you have a texture paste. Okay, so it's dry for the most part, and now I'm gonna just take an old wet one, so it's mostly dry, and just kind of wiping off any of the ink that is sitting on top of the texture paste. Okay, so the background is done, and now I'm just going to add some collage pieces and a little bit of stamping. I've got some, this is a number strip from Tim Holtz, and so I'm using some vintage photo around the edge, and I give it a little crease to make it look old. My number is just, it's a scrapbook paper that has all these numbers on it, and so I just punch them out with a little circle punch. And this strip here is exactly that. It's just a paper strip from Tim Holtz Ideology. And I give it a crease also. And then I add another piece of ephemera. I think that's from Memoir, maybe. Okay, so now I'm just going to start gluing those down. And I look at that, but I don't end up using that. And my focal image is going to be this leaf branch that I've drawn on a piece of old book paper. And so that's going to just kind of be my focal image for the piece. I'm going to add a couple stamps. This is from Eccentric. I use this one a lot because it has just random numbers, random things, and it just fits a lot of things. So I do use that a lot. And I'm using some black StazOn ink. And because there's this big dark area there, I'm taking one of my Posca Paint Pens, this one's gold, and just adding some half circles of dots. Just kind of brighten up that dark space. And now I'm positioning my leaf to figure out how I'm going to glue that on. And this is really thin, so you'd think I would use my Tombow glue stick, but it's going on to a really rough surface, so I am using my liquid glue. And you can see my stem did not go long enough, so I just extend that and then cut off the little piece that's gone beyond the edge. And since I have a couple raw edges there, new raw edges, I just dust them with some vintage photo. And I'm just seeing if there's any other thing I want to do. And I'm adding a sentiment, and it's from the Small Talk sticker book. And it is a sticker, but I always add glue just to make sure it's going to adhere, because usually my surfaces aren't perfectly smooth, or it might not adhere to all surfaces. So I always glue it on. And the last thing I'm going to do is add this stamp in over by the tab. Just was kind of looking blank, so I added it. This is also from the Eccentric line. And that's the last thing I do. Well, I do add a eyelet in the upper left corner to hang it on my journal, which you'll see in the final pictures. And I didn't get that on camera. I don't know why. But I hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a thumbs up if you liked it. If you have not subscribed, please do. I'd love to bring you along on the journey here. So whatever you do, you guys have a great day.